You may be excused for thinking that we are not in an election year. Blame it on COVID-19. We are just months away from a major general elections, and COVID-19, that pandemic, appears to have disrupted a lot. Tonight, we're going to assess the impact on the 2020 election, see how many few months we have left before we hit December 7th. Before we go into the details, though, let me update you on the numbers as of tonight. Nothing really has changed from last time, so let's quickly run through that. We know that we still are at 636 cases. Last night up until today, 24 hours, there hasn't been any movement on that particular front. Now, 17 treated, reverted to negative, tested twice. In both cases, they came out negative. Good news there. 605 cases categorized as mild disease and are on treatment. We understand they are responding to treatment as well. Now, a further breakdown of this will show us that 2 categorized as moderate to severe cases, none in a critical state, and so they don't need a ventilator. That is also very key. Where we're seeing across the world and across the globe is that when you get to this particular point, that is where the healthcare system begin to buckle because of the pressure that it is built on it by the sheer numbers of people going into the hospital in critical condition at the same time. What else do we know as far as the numbers is concerned? 8 have died so far. That is a grim picture. But if you compare to the global, I guess, death rate, we are really doing well on that front. Of the 636 confirmed COVID-19 cases, 268 were reported from routine surveillance. We also know that 253 from enhanced surveillance activities. We also know that 115 from travelers under mandatory quarantine in both Accra and in Tamale. Those are key numbers to watch there. A further breakdown for you in terms of the regional balance of this: Ashanti had 53, Eastern had 41, the Central has 1, Greater Accra, the overwhelming majority of cases can be found here with 509. If you go to the Upper West region, they have 7, Upper East has 4, Northeast is 1, and the Northern region 10. Let's come to the Volta region, for example, where, as we can see, they have Volta region has 9 and Western region has 1 as far as the breakdown is concerned. Now, election calendar is very important. All that we've seen over the last few weeks, really, since we entered into this really dangerous phase of the COVID-19, is affecting the election calendar. The new voters register, which was built to start in April, has been postponed. Tonight we're going to learn when exactly is the Electoral Commission hoping to again kickstart the registration program. It's a very controversial topic by itself. The COVID-19, thank goodness, poured a bit of cold water on it, doused the flames a bit. So when does the Electoral Commission hope to pick it up again? We'll learn shortly when they hope to do that. And then we also know that the MPP primaries, we just learned yesterday that too was scheduled originally for the 25th of April. That will be next week. Saturday, has also been suspended indefinitely. We don't know when exactly that will happen. The election calendar itself, the political parties have been forced to put on hold their election campaigns because how do you campaign for votes at a time when lives are at stake? It's a very dicey place to be as a politician, particularly if you are in opposition. Do you sit idle and wait and hope for this to pass before you start campaigning? And really, if you want to campaign, what do you do? So I'm curious to know how the NDC, for example, is adapting their 2020 campaigning within the time of COVID-19. We'll learn from them very shortly what they are doing about this very difficult time for everybody, including politicians. So a key question is to look at this. How is the Electoral Commission going to make up for the lost time? Because elections are a big deal in Ghana, a lot of moving parts, and you don't have time to execute everything because of COVID-19. So how do we fix the particular problem? I have guests who understand and have answers. Stay with us. And thanks for staying with us here on PM Express. Tonight, a fascinating conversation about something that affects all our lives. Yes, COVID-19, I know that, but this one is about elections, and COVID-19 has a firm grip on timing issues as well. And so I'm wondering how the various actors are coping with the disruptions brought on by COVID-19. Joining us via phone tonight is the Electoral Commission's Director of Electoral Services, is Dr. Serebo Kwaku. Mr. Kwaku, thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. Also joining us via Skype tonight is Evans Nemako. He is the Director of Elections for the New Patriotic Party, the incumbent political party. Also joining us tonight, also via Skype, is Mr. Alex Tegbefia. He's a former health minister. He's a member of the NDC's COVID-19 team. He is the Director of International Relations and also a member of the Functional Executive Committee of the party. A lot to share with us tonight on how the party is coping in these times, especially with elections just months away. Also joining us tonight is Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante. He is the Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Center for Democratic Development. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time here on PM Express. Dr. Kwaku, I want to start with you. You were forced to postpone your registration, the first major item on the calendar this year, which was supposed to be the controversial registration of voters for a new voters register. Do you have a new date for this?
Good evening, Ivan. Just to correct you, of my name is Kweku, not Kwaku.
Kweku, thank you very much, sir.
Kweku. Yeah, we are here to come out with a date because we are waiting for the lockdown and the coronavirus to subside. As we said the other day, we are also in consultation with some medical experts and other stakeholders. So when at the right time they advise us that we can go ahead, then we will add our activities.
Okay, so as of now, it's still an indefinite suspension until you get word from the health experts.
Exactly.
Okay, but you don't have time. I mean, we are in April. We've done 4 months already. That leaves you 8 months, well, 7 months to prepare for this before December. You don't really have time, do you?
We are monitoring things and we are observing what is happening and we are in consultation. I don't know whether you are aware that even today, South Korea had a parliamentary election.
Mm-hmm.
So today, South Korea had a parliamentary election today.
Okay.
So like I said, that we are observing and consulting. So at the appropriate time, we'll come out with our detailed program for the registration and other things.
However, as you wait for the health experts to advise you, do you have any tentative dates you are playing with now? I'm sure you should be doing some tentative dates currently planning because, of course, this is an election. Is there the Electoral Commission thinking through any possible dates yet?
What I would say is that we are supposed to finish the compilation of the register, do everything so that we can. Our original arrangement is to do our registration in September.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have the time, and if we are able to start and finish by probably July or something like that, we will be within our time.
Okay,
so that as the time goes, it makes the work a bit crashing, and we need to readjust the top activity.
Okay, good. So for what you're saying, your estimate is that you're hoping that everything will be over so you can do this latest by the end of July.
Yes, that is completion.
Completion of the registration.
Yes.
Okay. Now, quickly also on this voters register, there were processes that you were undertaking towards that, procurement, etc. Are you done with all that processes already?
I can tell you on authority that we have finished with all the levels of recruitment. What is left now is for the registration.
Okay.
And once we are through with our registration, coupled with our public education, then we are ready for the registration.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if today the health experts advise you that you can go, how quickly can you?
I said health experts and other stakeholders.
Okay. So if the health experts and the other stakeholders say, each electoral commission, you can now go, how quickly can you mobilize for us to see the date of registration? Within a week?
Our program is that we should be able to use about 3 weeks to finish the registration.
Okay.
So the only different time that we will need before the registration will be the training. So we are finished with the recruitment. The people are already there. So once they say we can start on this date, we need just 3 weeks for training and we can start the registration.
You can start. Now, however, I'll come to you again because the registration and the new voters register is not the only thing on the election calendar. So I'll come to you for the other. Hold the line for me briefly. I want to bring in Mr. Alex Segbefia, former health minister. He's also a member of the functional executive committee of the National Democratic Congress. Mr. Segbefia, it's been ages. Where have you been hiding? I mean, Alex Segbefia used to be a regular on all my shows until after the elections. Thanks to have you finally back on my show, Alex Segbefia.
Good evening, Evans, and good evening to your listeners.
Great. So
I haven't been hiding. I'm just making sure that we gave the MPP enough time to see what they could do after all the promises. So we are now ready to come back full swing.
Okay, great to hear from you. And now tell me, I don't know if you heard from the Director of Electoral Services about the timelines you're working with as far as the new voters register is concerned. Your reaction to that?
Well, I'm putting it mildly, I'm disappointed. You know, even before we began dealing with this particular issue all the way back in January, one of the main factors, apart from all the issues we had about procurement, the way there was no need for a new register, etc., all the arguments, one of the major planks of our arguments was that there wasn't time. And now it's even worse because we've lost 4 weeks, which was not part of anybody's program. You can almost call it an act of God, even though it's human related, with this COVID issue. I also think that the EC is dragging its planning. And if they're not careful, they're going to, the alternative which exists, by the time they decide to go to that alternative, they will then create another problem for us and then give the impression that they should have stuck to their first position, which is not the case. We already have a register. And in their wisdom, they felt they wanted a new one because it would give them certain problems. Now with the timing, having used that register in December, the best and quickest and safest for all of us is for them to say, we'll use the same register one more time. We'll do a limited registration for those who are just 18 and above in September, which will mean that the queues will be not so many because it's not going to deal with the whole country. And therefore, based on that, we can then have an election in December, even if you say COVID-19 is on a diminishing return. We've heard of situations where there has been reinfections, even in China. So it is not something that when you see there is a decline, you immediately say, oh, it's all over, we are going back to normal. No. Social distancing still has to be kept for a longer period. The way we deal with ourselves and the way we go to functions has to be kept to a minimum. The restrictions on public engagements, even when we believe we are coming out of it, will be restricted. It will be a gradual process. If tomorrow they said that there was no COVID-19, it will take us at least a good 2 months for us to reduce these issues. And I'm being generous. So I don't, for the life of me, understand how we are even thinking of putting the whole nation to a 3-week period of registration, when the data that is to be collected is more, and they expect to do this whole registration in 3 weeks, as whenever they do it. I think that is not enough time. I think we are going to rush. Put that aside, Evans. The last time we did a registration, when we even had more time, we ended up with problems at the election in December 2012. It meant that some people, the machines were not working properly, and they had to vote into the second, even the third day. You know what the outcome of that was?
The election
We
petition.
ended up in court for 8 months. Please, let's use the register we have. Say it now, begin the planning now, get the former people who were involved with it, make the decision early, put people's minds at rest. Let us not think we are all now having to go and queue when this illness is still in the pipeline. Of interest, Evans, just before I know I'm just quickly.
Sure.
Is it not significant that now the second largest numbers coming out of the regions is in Eastern region? When we said that the registration that was taking place there in terms of the National Identification Authority was not the best, somebody will say it's coincidence. Others will say maybe it was bad decision making.
Okay.
I rest my case.
Just stay with me. I want to bring in Evans Nemako, is another good friend of mine and my namesake, obviously, Director of Elections for the New Patriotic Party. Mr. Nemako, what's your reaction to that? You've heard the Electoral Commission's timelines. They have to do some adjustments. NDC says that with COVID-19 now in play, it's better for us to start thinking about other alternatives other than just saying we simply still want to go ahead with the voter registration. What's your take?
Well, thank you very much, Evans, and I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great.
And I hope Alex is also doing very well.
Yes.
Mr. Asante, good to see you. Let me extend greetings to your viewers. I think that we are not in normal times, and you all agree to that. But I'm really not surprised about the position of Alex. As I've said, we are not in normal times, and the whole of the world has been taken by surprise. And so, yes, the EC had, since last year, given us some timelines on how they were going to compile a new voters register towards the conduct of the 2020 presidential and parliamentary election. That aside, I think where we find ourselves now requires that all stakeholders need to come on board and devise new innovative arrangements to ensure that the elections that is ahead of us is conducted in a manner that is free, fair, and transparent for all stakeholders to accept the outcome. Enough of the accusations. From day one, I'm aware the NDC never supported the arrangement of a new voters register. But for us, as New Patriotic Party, our major focus now is to support the government to come up with policies and programs that will help the whole of Ghana to contain our current challenges. It's not an issue of elections. It's an issue of protecting lives.
Well, I get the point you're making, Evans, but you cannot ignore, whilst you do all the other things, that we are in election year. You have to also be planning for contingencies. And that's why I guess this conversation is important. I'm just wondering, with COVID-19 in the mix, as it relates specifically to the voter registration exercise, what is the NPP's own thinking around what is possible?
Well, for us as the New Patriotic Party, our major focus is to support the government to come out with policies, programs that will help contain the challenges we have now. Nobody can tell of the future, what is happening tomorrow, a month ahead of us, and 2 months ahead of us. So what is most important is that when you put things on hold and ensure that the health experts and all stakeholders, Ghanaians all together across the country, observe what needs to be done from WHO, from the Ghanaian expert health service providers, frontliners, and individuals, that we observe social distance, we keep to our homes, we observe continuous washing of our hands under running water and use sanitizers where possible, and also avoid contact. I mean, these are things that we need to support now, rather than challenging the EC whether there will be a new voters register or not. But Evans, for us as New Patriotic Party, if even elections is held tomorrow, the people of Ghana are ready to give Nana Addo another 4-year term to give more to Ghana. You've all seen it. The president has shown leadership. Even developed world are not even able to come out with some of these programs. So we are not here to debate on political arrangement. It's what needs to be done by all stakeholders to ensure that we are able to contain this pandemic. That's the most important thing. Let me bring it. Come on board, war, and let's stop the politicization of all issues. It doesn't help.
Let me bring in Dr. Asante. I get your point about politicization, but I doubt this is one of those. I mean, it's about planning, because whether we like it or not, the elections are due on December 7th. Dr. Asante,
sure.
Dr. Asante, let me bring you in. I mean, we started by talking about the voters register. The EC had given us some timelines. They are hoping that by this will be over. They'll be given the green light with other stakeholders so they can run this and finish by July. But I'm wondering, should the Electoral Commission, and by the way, if you look at it globally, the modeling and predictions with COVID-19 is telling us that this could be with us for a while. Should the Electoral Commission be thinking about alternatives to to compile a new voters register?
Yeah, good evening, Evans, and good evening to your viewers. I penned an article this week where I looked at two main scenarios. The first one anticipates the Electoral Commission starting the registration process in May, and actually giving the current extension of the ban on social gathering and so on. It means that certainly it will not happen anytime in April. If anything will happen, it will start in May. Now, as far as I know about the registration process, it takes about 44 days for the Electoral Commission to be able to try and collect the biographical data and the biometric data of a potential 17 to 18 million people. So using 8,000 registration kits, that would be about 3 months to do that compilation of the register. So that would put us around July, maybe even August, because if it's done within a COVID context, then it means that the Electoral Commission has to be geared, properly geared with PPEs and so on and so forth, and you have to observe all kinds of social distancing. That will slow down the process. Of course, this would be also informed by having turnout issues. I mean, if there's high turnout, then this will stand. If there's low turnout, maybe it might reduce the time. So that's your second best scenario that you can work with. If you are not able to start in May and you have to start in June, then for me, I think we need to consider alternatives, because then it really, really narrows the time frame for finishing with the register, taking nominations, campaigning, and the rest of the electoral calendar. It really makes it tight. And there's one issue which we haven't mentioned here, and maybe Dr. Kweku can shed some light on this. That the current CI before, which is supposed to be maturing in 21 days, requires that the only acceptable ID card for registration is the Ghana card or the passport. Now, I need confirmation on that, because if that is the case, then it means that the NIA has to finish its job and register all Ghanaians, because I've not been registered, before we can be sure that that could be used as identification for registering. And that, if that is to happen, then obviously that throws the calendar completely off.
Can I get clarity?
For me are the,
can I get clarity for you on that point? Let me bring in Dr. Kweku. Dr. Kweku, can you provide us some details on the CI before Parliament and whether indeed it's true that it states that the Ghana card and the passport will be the only two documents that will be used for the registration once you start? Hello, Dr. Kweku. Hello, Dr. Kweku. Okay, we're trying to get, he's still with us. We'll try and get him to clarify that, because that is such an important point. But let me come back to Evans Nemako. You just heard the analysis from Dr. Asante that the Electoral Commission, based on the scenarios he painted there, at least should factor in considerations of alternatives to the voter register. What's your take on, what's your reaction to that?
It is the right direction, but a little bit of challenge was the 43 days needed by the EC. That was the initial timelines given. But the EC said that they were going to do a clustered arrangement where in each polling station, they're going to spend 10 days for the registration and move on to the next polling station. So each of the 4 polling stations that comes under one cluster will have one kit. So they're going to rotate for the 4 polling stations for 40 days. So each polling station will be entitled for 10 days of registration to cover maximum 850 registered voters. That was the argument made by the EC to political parties at IPAC. I'm also aware that the CI that has been laid in Parliament mentioned that eligible voters will have to identify themselves by their passports, their national identification ID card, or a registered voter is allowed to guarantee for 10 people who do not have access to passport and voter ID. But Evans, coming to the issue, I think that Dr. Asante has made a point, and it is important that the EC adopt innovative arrangement to ensure that we have a register that will usher us into the 2020 elections.
Okay.
Whether we like it or not, the Ghana's constitution supports that elections be held on December 7, 2020. And there's no argument about that. So it is for the EC. The challenge we have as a nation is that we are not certain when COVID-19 is leaving us.
Yeah.
And it is for all of us to pray to God Almighty, believers come together and ensure that
and I guess that is a big unknown. Dr. Kweku is back with me. Dr. Kweku,
can I make two?
I have Dr. Kweku, so I want to quickly make the clarifications about the CI, and then we'll come back. Dr. Kweku, thanks for joining us again. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. I was asking the question about the CI before Parliament. Just confirm for me, when does the CI mature, and what is the mode of verification for the voters register as the CI articulates?
Thank you very much. I've been following everything, and I heard what Dr. Asante said. I am reliably informed that the CI will mature in May.
Okay.
And as Dr. Asante was saying, there's no way we can start the registration in April. Because we need, I think in my first presentation, I mentioned that we are still with the recruitment. We will need about 3 weeks to do the training of the official before we roll out our registration activity. That means that election is a process. It is not an activity. We will have to combat the register. We will have to do the exhibition. We will have to do nomination. And we have to do the voting itself. None of them can be skipped. So if you look at our initial program, even when we planned that we're going to start the registration in April, we have agreed and planned that we will have our exhibition in September. Meaning that from April up to, I think, middle or somewhere in September, they are all part of the registration process. Then by law, we can do nomination not less than 90 days to the election day, which was the 7th, and not less than 30 days. So we decided that we would then go by the 30 days, meaning that we were going to receive nomination somewhere in October. All these timelines are still there, and we are convinced that if the COVID and our experts and stakeholders will agree with us, that we can roll out our registration. We have up to the end of July to compile the register. We will do the printing of the registers, do our exhibition in September. We'll have our nomination in October, and we can have the election in December. So I think we still have enough time to go around our activity.
And quickly, the CI, does it state that only the Ghana card and a voter's register and a passport are the two documents needed for registration?
And guarantors. We shouldn't.
And guarantors.
Exactly.
And guarantors.
So what it means is initially, if you don't have any document, you have two people to guarantee for you, and those people could guarantee for only 5 people. With the new CI, because of the expectation that some of the materials have been dropped, we have now increased it that you can guarantee for about 10 people, not more than 10 people. So we shouldn't rule out the guarantee system, because most Ghanaians don't have the cards and the rest. Now with the Ghana card, if we see the CI 91, which was passed in, I think 2016, had it as part of the requirement. So the Ghana card is not a new requirement. It has been the CI 91 before the new one that was.
Okay. So the challenge Dr. Santi makes is now you have to wait also for the National Identification Authority to also finish its registration before you can start yours.
That it is not the only requirement. If you don't have the passport, if you don't have the Ghana card, the guarantors can do it for you. That's why we have now increased it from 5 to 10. Meaning that one person can guarantee for more than 5 as it used to be.
A quick substantive question that has come up is, in the midst of all this uncertainty, is the Electoral Commission thinking about alternatives to a new voters register?
I don't know the alternative that you
as in, for example, Mr. Lesewewe has suggested that simply go by the limited registration to capture those who just turned 18.
So there will be registration.
Say that again.
So still there will be registration. If you have to go by the alternative that you are talking about, still there will be registration.
Yes. But that will be a limited one, not the changing the entire register.
But there will be registration.
Okay, but
so either we do a new registration, or we do limited registration, there will be registration.
Good. So I guess the question is, is that in play? Is that something you're considering also?
No, we have passed that argument.
I know. I mean, I'm not asking you whether, I'm just asking in the midst of COVID-19.
I'm saying that the commission has passed that argument. As far as the commission is concerned, we are saying that we can only ensure credible register with a new register.
Okay, but that brings back my question, and this is relevant, if you may. In the midst of the uncertainties brought on by COVID-19, nobody knows when this is going to pass. Is the EC at least now reconsidering that and saying, in a push come to shove, we will have to shelve this and just do limited? Is that something you're considering?
Then can I also ask you a question?
Please do.
Yeah, in the phase of the COVID-19, are you also thinking of not having election 2020?
I don't know. I mean, it's something that the Electoral Commission has to...
So what I'm saying, anybody in the Electoral Commission, knowing the resources that we have, knowing the situation of the register, will go for a new credible register.
I totally get that, but I don't know if you can answer me. Is there a thinking around what if it's not possible?
And that would defeat our argument that if you have to have credible election 2020, we need a new register.
Okay, but you don't have control over COVID-19. So what if this goes all the way to September?
Then the next question is, are you also thinking of that if COVID doesn't allow, we'll not have the election too?
But that question is based on the premise that you cannot have the December elections without a new voters register. That's the premise that you are basing that question on. But that premise cannot be.
The Electoral Commission knows and thinks that there should be a new credible register before we go into the election.
Well, thank you. Let me bring back my guest. Dr. Sante, your quick reaction to that. I want to hear from Alex next. Dr. Sante. Hello, Dr. Sante, can you hear me? Mr. Segbefia, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Please respond to what you just heard from me quickly.
Well, I think that the Electoral Commission's answer, my dear brother, is unfortunate. You are being asked to consider issues. The best is to say, look, we'll look at all options. You don't say categorically, this is my position, because you do not know how long COVID-19 is going to last. And are you therefore saying that if you are not able to compile a new register and COVID-19 finishes in August, you are going to push us not to have an election in December, and you are going to now insist that the election should be postponed? What kind of EC do we have? Contingency plans. You've been told A, B, C. Okay, we will go and look at it. Let us see what will happen at the time. You are making categorical statements now, saying that no register, no election. Or no register, no credible election. So perhaps there will be election, but you wouldn't deem it credible. I don't know where we are going with this issue. Frankly, I'm totally disappointed, because it's options. You look at the options and you make decisions based on what is available. NDC didn't bring COVID-19. Even before COVID-19, we told you that there was not enough time. You said you were going to start a registration program in April. Now it's actually going into May. You are running out of time, and if you're not careful, if COVID-19 doesn't, we pray that it goes, but it doesn't go in the way we think it should go, and there's a further delay, look at the other options. And you have been told what you can do. Are we saying that all the district assembly election we had in December is useless? We just had it in December. Are we saying that the people we voted in were useless? And it was an unfair, after we were told that these were fair, free by everybody, that these elections were credible, and now this register, once we crossed into 2020, it became useless overnight? Please, people shouldn't talk like this.
Let me quickly, Dr. Sante, can you hear me now? Hello, Dr.
Can I make a point about the CI? So I really worry about this guarantee issue, because this was one of the main justifications for introducing facial recognition. You know, that the EC has displayed that it wants to limit the use of the guarantee system. You know, why can't we use voter ID as another form of ID? Because it was even suggested that the process can be speeded up. It can speedy because the biographical data is already available, so that only in the biometric data that will be captured. So if your data is already there, you just have to confirm or correct information so that the registration process can be quick. So I am actually at a loss why the EC has discarded the use of voter IDs as a form of identification. Because if that is the case, then it actually raises questions about the 2019 December election. You know, so I'm actually shocked that Parliament actually allowed this to pass. You know, without raising serious objections to this. So I really don't think the guarantee system helps, because the EC itself knows that it can be abused, and it's something that's very difficult for us to track. And that's why we have brought in facial recognition. So why are we insisting on this?
I'm going to take a break. When I return, I would explore the next calendar issues relating to the two parties also, because both of them have their own individual calendars and the campaigning calendar as well. Stay with us. You're still live with me here on PMXS. My guest, as you've already been watching, is Dr. Srebo Kweku. He is the Director of Electoral Services at the Electoral Commission. Also with us is Dr. Kojo Asante with the CDD, Alex Egbefia with the NDC, and Evans Demako with the NPP. He's the Director of Elections. Alex Egbefia, you know, is a member of the NDC COVID-19 team. He's also on the Function Executive Committee, member of the NDC. Evans Demako, let me bring you in. Just yesterday, you announced that you've had to postpone your parliamentary primaries indefinitely. You don't have time to pull this off. I mean, do you have an idea when you want to bring this back?
Well, thank you. Even on this one, I hope you are aware of the release by the General Secretary, Mr. John Boedo, from yesterday's National Steering Committee meeting. We know that we are not in normal time, so that emergency meeting resolved that the party is not going to go ahead to conduct the said primaries on 25th of this month, but we'll wait and support the arrangement to fight and ensure that COVID-19 is ruptured. And then leadership will come out with a new date and arrangement for conferences to be held across the 168 constituencies where we have certain members of parliament for a new members of parliamentary candidate to be elected. I mean, so that was about it.
Okay, so I guess the Electoral Commission,
our major focus is to ensure that we put in place arrangements and have the party in place, protect lives, ensure that we have lives. And once
I get the point.
We know that all other interests will be addressed.
I appreciate that point. I think it's a point you really reiterated throughout the conversation. But I need to ask you, same question to the Electoral Commission, because, again, nobody knows when this is going to be over. Is the MPP considering alternatives to the primaries, by the way? Because if this happens to end in October, God forbid, you won't have time to pull this off.
Well, I think when we get to that point, we'll cross.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Segba. Mr. Segbafia, you've also been affected somewhat because you are unable to campaign fully, and nobody knows when this is going to go away. I wonder, how are you adapting your campaign in this particular time?
Well, Evans, my colleague on the MPP keeps making comments about the concentration on COVID-19, and that's where we are. If it wasn't for the nature of the program which Joy called us on, we wouldn't be talking politics. And I think that we should be clear that it is the program, and you're absolutely right, Evans. People are still playing politics, and therefore there are certain issues that have to be cleared, and it is good you put out this program. The EC has gone to Parliament 3 times. They took the CI first. It was defective. Within 24 hours, they brought it back again. It was defective. They took it back again. So some people haven't stopped doing politics in the interim. So please, don't give any excuses for talking about it at this stage. We are not doing deep politics. We are looking at the Electoral Commission's issues and where we will be in terms of politics. We are not actually campaigning at this stage. But in terms of the process, should things not go as planned, we are hoping that people would be looking outside the box, seeing what could happen. And the more I hear from the EC, the more I'm getting worried that they are not thinking out. They're on a one-track system, singing a certain song, and they are going to put us into a constitutional nightmare if they are not careful. Now, we are planning in terms of getting our campaign out, looking at alternatives, looking at how best. But the truth of the matter is that a lot of things are on hold at the moment because, like everyone else, the first thing is that if we are all going to be falling ill and falling over ourselves and our loved ones are dying, we have a problem. So the focus, and that's why we formed even the committee, that is the COVID-19 committee, to ensure that we assist government in every way to get rid of this thing as soon as possible. Because it's not in our interest for this thing to drag any longer.
Okay.
Apart from the fact that we are also Ghanaian.
Okay.
So yes, we have our plans, we have alternatives. I'm not going to discuss them on air, but at the moment, that is our focus.
Dr. Asante, I've heard people raise the possibility of a constitutional crisis if the COVID-19, God forbid, stays with us for at least even 6 more months. It could be disastrous. You are a lawyer as well. Have you spent any time processing this, what this will mean for December 7th?
Yes, I think many lawyers, administrative, constitutional lawyers, are looking at the options. I think in parliamentary systems around the world, it's probably easier to postpone elections. Ours makes the tenure of the president, fixed. There is really no wiggle room within the constitution to alter that. Even if you go with Article 298, which is the residual powers that are given to Parliament, it might be interpreted to be inconsistent with the Constitution. So, people have proposed that maybe there's a pathway through Article 113 where a dissolved Parliament is actually recalled, and then they stay with 3 months where the Speaker is acting president to hold an election with these months. Now, this is something we've not explored, and it might require a Supreme Court interpretation, or somebody might challenge it, and so on. So, in all of this, I think it's just prudent for everybody, state entities, for governments, for stakeholders, media, everybody to think ahead. As scenario planning, you might not need it, but you just want to be prepared so that you don't get a constitutional crisis or a governance crisis, and add to the problems of dealing with a public health situation like we have currently. You have to continue to even coordinate the response to that pandemic. So I think it's very, very important for us to really look at all of these, just like the finance minister is looking at the economy. Other people are looking at other impact of the COVID-19. We need to plan, because if you have joblessness and people can't do anything and they're hungry and so on, you have chaos on your hands. So I think these exercises are important. It doesn't mean we are not sensitive to public health issues. We should just put our head down, put the scenarios there. We might not need it, but at least let's think about it and have those options available.
I'm grateful, Dr. Asante, for joining us. I'm grateful, Evans Nemako, also for making time. Alex Egbefia, thank you for joining us. Also, Dr. Kweku with the Electoral Commission, who also joined us on the phone. Dr. Kweku, grateful that you joined us on the phone. Now we understand what your plans and contingencies are. We just, I guess, as Evans Nemako has been at pains to declare, I guess all of us put all our hands on the wheel and hope that we work towards ending this as soon as possible. Other than that, as Dr. Asante has stated, we may have to encounter and deal with a constitutional crisis that, God forbid, we don't want to get there. Thank you, gentlemen, and stay safe. My name is Evans Mins. Enjoy the rest of the evening.